Many of you know that a couple of years ago I posted a video about a couple of the things that were wrong with the music business today. Not to mention, I've probably done a couple of other videos on this topic also, but it's time I think that we talk about one specific item, one specific article about this whole entire mess that I cited as a reason why music has kind of gone downhill, at least with the way in which we receive it, the way in which we are able to kind of showcase, well, our collections, showcase what we have, play what we have. Now, I have to preface this in a certain way. Whenever I grew up in the 1990s, I know I'm acting like it's so long ago, even though it's only 20 years, the way in which you had music was kind of a little bit different than it is today. You basically had physical mediums such as CDs or cassettes, and if you really wanted to do something that was more of a mix, if you wanted to share something with an individual, you actually had to record or dub a mixtape for them. It was actually something that, for a long time, there was conceived as kind of a romantic sentiment. It's something that you usually gave to, a girl that you really liked if you were a dude, or vice versa. Something that you could either share with your friends if you wanted to expose them to a couple of different and newer bands. And this was the great way in which a lot of local and young talent was able to kind of get their name out there whenever they were, trying to test the waters outside of the area in which they typically promoted themselves. Now, fast forward 20 years later, and we have something that is perhaps a little bit better than that. In fact, we have a couple of different services that are better than that. However, the one that I'm going to principally focus all of my attention with this video today on is iTunes. Now, iTunes is a service that's been in service now for about 10 years. It was obviously sponsored by the Apple Corporation, and it was an idea that was conceived to go along with their iPod. The iPod, of course, was the medium that basically revolutionized the way in which we listen to music on the go. Whereas before we needed Walkmans and Discmen and cheap little MP3 players that didn't exactly get very much in the way of memory, that way you couldn't put a lot of songs on there, these were mass storage devices. Basically, they were almost like walking hard drives that you could store initially music, but since then have expanded it to movies, to videos, to television shows, to applications. Of course, this has also become coupled with the iPhone, where you can now listen to all of your music on your phone while also being able to take calls, surf the web, and do all sorts of other different things. But iTunes itself was the service that was designed by this, and this was something where you could import your library into the iTunes protocol, into the iTunes application on your computer, and then transfer the music onto your device, onto your iPod, whether it be a big brick generation, either that or one of the newer Nanos, or one of the even newer ideas that they've come out, such as the Shuffle, or, of course, with the iPhone itself. Now, one of the principal designs of this idea was in order to have artists put their music and material on there for download. That way, individuals could go onto the iTunes application, whether it be with iTunes cards, which assigned a certain value of credit to a user's account, either that or through their credit card. That way they could purchase the songs that they wanted individually. This way, they didn't have to purchase the entire album if they felt as though they were only going to enjoy the singles, or if after sampling the songs, whether it be at a local music store or through personal use, whether it be because somebody else had bought the album and they listened to it and they realized that, not all the songs are all that good. These end users now could basically purchase just the songs that they wanted to, if they wanted to do that. Either that or purchase entire albums and do so digitally. This was something that was a revolution. It's to the point where the downloads quickly went into the millions, to the billions, and so forth. So now, after about 10 years, we have a very strange phenomenon that just took place in the past year, and that's the fact that the digital medium, the digital sales went down a tenth of a percent to be exact, whereas sales of vinyl went up, but the physical medium of CDs, compact discs, have gone down. So iTunes, we need to talk about something regarding to iTunes, regarding to us as music fans, us as people who enjoy music, we who are the musically elite, either that or the audiophiles of this new generation. We need to speak about whether or not, at least in our eyes, in our perhaps elitist eyes, if some people would want to say that, if iTunes is really a format that we want to use in order to have our music, or if this is something that's kind of a sham of its former self, or something that was not that great of an idea to begin with, and something that was really working hand in hand to decay the industry as opposed to help it. Now, first, we need to preface the fact that iTunes has been able to help its own industry and help the digital media industry really take force. Think about all the things that happened post-iTunes. Think about the fact that through iTunes we were able to get video sharing protocols such as this one right here with YouTube, and we were going to have the ability through podcasting and other different ways that those things could be made available on iTunes. That way people could purchase them and download them for their iPod devices. So in a way, this has been a medium that has delivered some individuals a little bit of extra revenue, either that or helped them turn into either local or nationwide stars. That's right. Because of podcasting and because of the different services that iTunes has been able to offer to individuals, these individuals that were kind of just, had a good idea but didn't really have a platform for it, now they were able to have a platform for it and really share it with the world. This is something that's especially true whenever you see podcasts from either local, sports talk radio stations, either that or there is a podcast that's very popular right now by Chris Jericho, who is a wrestler that has gone to #1 in, I think, the sports department on iTunes, and it is something that has kind of given a little bit more of a personal view, a personal window, and has kind of turned a lot of individuals into sort of their own talk show host and kind of given them a platform for whatever message that they really plan to speak with everybody. Now, secondly, this also helps local musicians. This gives them the opportunity to get their music put on iTunes and perhaps make a little bit of revenue that way, considering record sales themselves were down. This also gives them instant access to a wide array of individuals. Instead of pressing CDs and having them put in stores with absolutely no hype and no way to really find out what these people, what these bands are like. So iTunes coupled with Bandcamp and at the time, MySpace and even Facebook kind of helps these individuals and these bands get a little bit more attention, get a little bit more reputation. That way, they have the opportunity to potentially be discovered by a major record company and get themselves signed. Now, as audiophiles, this is something where for a long time I've preached against using iTunes, only because of the fact that as a collector I really don't see the point. I don't see the necessity. I don't see why iTunes was something that was kind of eaten up and devoured by everybody and loved instantaneously. I had an iPod for a couple of years. In fact, I've had a couple of different iPods, and I found the process of importing my present library very tedious. It was something that took a lot of time, and it wasn't until a couple of years ago where they fixed the bug for tagging, where you didn't have to worry about what the tag of the file was. It could be an MP3, a WMA, or whatever, and you were able to import it onto your iPod. That was something I think they really should have implemented from the start, but I believe that they were trying to make one specific file type as a standard in order to kind of alienate the market, either that or really differentiate it. Now, another thing that needs to be said about this is that if you're a proud collector of be it vinyl, CD, tapes, whatever it may be, this is something that kind of invades that whole ideal. This is something where you might be able to get a printout of the CD itself, and you might be able to get a printout of whatever the cover art, whatever the lyric sheets and things like that might be, but you're not going to get it in that nice physical form that you were getting it before. But we have to say something else about this also. We're speaking about some really minute, trivial disadvantages to iTunes. Things that really are not seen as large problems. We're going to get to some of the larger problems a little bit later on. Now let's talk about a couple of the advantages. One of the main advantages is the ease of access, the ease in which individuals can now get their music. This is something that was kind of part of the hyping process of iTunes. This is something that really helped bolster its reputation very quickly, where this whole entire library was right there, it was present, it was instantly searchable, and so long as the music itself was present in the iTunes library, you were able to purchase it, you were able to get your hands on it, and you were also able to get your hands on just a couple of singles if you wanted to. You were now no longer bound to purchase an entire record. That way you could get the songs that you wanted. So for example, if you listen to a hip-hop artist and you know that there's one or two songs that you like off of the album, but the other 15 just really don't suit your fancy, you can go into iTunes and you can get the two songs that you like, and to hell with the rest of them. It doesn't matter that the artist worked just as hard on those and just didn't happen to be hits, but yeah, you could get the two songs that you wanted to help build your mix, to help you with, whenever you need to get pumped up before work, or to help that road trip go by a little bit quicker, whatever it may be. So this is definitely a positive for individuals that definitely like a large array of music, and are the individuals that if they had been born about 30 or 40 years later would be a little bit more prone to buy the singles that you saw on either 7 inches or 45s, whatever it may be, that were really focused on just having an A side and a B side and nothing more. So for these individuals, this is kind of iTunes and the 20th century, 21st century, I guess, was version of the single idea, or the EP idea, whatever that you really want to call it. Secondly, the platform was absolutely 100% expandable. This was something where you could easily make a little bit of cash yourself, either that or offer your things for free and get your own stuff out there, which is something that I mentioned previously. And thirdly, there was an increasing community. This was something that was being used by a lot of different people, so you could also use different forums and stuff in order to springboard your way into finding newer music, different music that perhaps you would not find in your local record store. Because you have to understand, record stores, while they do house and warehouse a lot of different music, they don't necessarily showcase everything on their floor. It's something that's next to impossible to do, considering spacing issues, not to mention you can't have product just sit out there forever and never sell. So those are a couple of the different positives. And also, to go alongside of the positive, we have to kind of take a look at the way in which we view other things as well. The physical media idea is really, really dying, and it's something that's not all of that great. It's something that kind of sucks, I'm not going to lie, especially since I work at a store that primarily focuses on selling physical media. These days we have Netflix. That way we can watch television shows and movies and different things from the past, either that or from the present, and kind of keep up on everything. And this is a service that's available for a monthly charge, and we're able to do this with relative ease. It kind of makes buying things almost obsolete whenever it comes to physical media, because all you really need to do is have a subscription fee and you have unlimited access, which is kind of neat, but at the same time you also have to see if it's available for instant watch, or if you have to get the physical discs. There's loopholes. That's all I'm going to say about that. I think the most chilling discovery was with Steam, and I love Steam as a gamer. I'm a very big fan of Steam. I just got it recently, just a couple of months ago, and I was kind of, just kind of whatever to the idea for a long time, but Steam offers an important platform for a lot of different gamers. Instead of having a physical console and playing a lot of the games that they love on the physical console, they can now buy a lot of those games on Steam. Now, obviously, not all titles are available. Xbox and PlayStation, Sony have both made it where there are many games that are just exclusives to their franchise. Same with the Nintendo Wii. You're not going to go on to Steam and find a Mario game. However, there are many games that are available through Steam from either the past or the present that have now kind of gotten revitalized life and almost have given us a little bit of a real retro gaming ideal or revival that has come over the past couple of years. And this is something that is available for free. The only thing that you have to purchase, like with iTunes, are the games. So, buying a game on Steam is very similar to buying a song on iTunes, very similarly. Just like you can easily buy an album on iTunes. So, really, is it all that bad? Is it all that bad to purchase all your stuff off of iTunes? Well, yes and no. I really think that for the idea of owning music and having music, it's something that should be best done through a physical copy. But at the same time, for up-and-coming artists or artists that cannot secure mainstream 100% releases, like, the underground works, the underground bands, the bands that are just starting to get their feet, the real regional hot artists and things like that, this isn't something that's always available, and plus they don't necessarily always have the funding. This is something they can actually use to help crowdfund, quite literally, before the crowdfund website and idea, future releases or recording time. That way they can record the record. And that just seems like a ridiculous sentence. Now, also, secondly, you do still technically have the music, and you are still technically buying for it. But the one thing that I will say about that is that you have to go by what the buy rate of a traditional song is. Originally, the songs usually went for about $1, but recently the price has gone up to, I believe, $1.39 or $1.49. It's gone up. This is something where whenever you do the P's and Q's, whenever you kind of take a look at the songs that you download, if you're going for an entire album and you're not doing the flat album rate, you have to examine whether or not it's truly 100% worth it. Albums these days are usually anywhere between $9.99 to $15.99. Given the number of tracks that are on the album, really determines whether or not it's worth it or not. So, for example, if you listen to rap music and there's 18 tracks on one album and you want 10 of them, at $1.49, for example, a pop, you're going to be paying exactly $14.99 for those 10 tracks. Whereas you can get all 18 tracks perhaps at a local record store for $14.99, or if it's on sale or on clearance, for a lot less than that. So it's one of those things where you also have to contemplate your own economy as opposed to contemplating merely the ease of access. This is something that I don't think is thought about a lot. I think a lot of people just do it because of the convenience issue, and plus since most people are just doing a song here and a song there, as opposed to going after numerous tracks off of the same album to the point of, 10 of 18 in the example that I just mentioned, which is roughly 5/9 of the album. This isn't something that you see all of that often. However, the economy does start to play into an effect whenever you go throughout the course of a long period of time. Now, another negative that we have to really pay attention to, another negative that we really need to focus our attention on, is what this means for the artists. Not to mention what this also means for the physical media idea. The physical media idea based around this is dying, and it's dying very quickly. It's something that we really need to revitalize, something that really needs a lot of health to it. Now, a lot of people can argue that this isn't just based around the fact that iTunes is present. It's not based around the fact that downloading is present. It's also based around the fact that music itself has decayed, has become plastic, has really become a shell of its former self, and for the most part is enjoyed by unceremonious boobs. And while I can really agree with a lot of those sentiments, I don't really agree with the whole unceremonious boob idea. I just think that some people have absolutely no taste. But with that said, the physical media is something that's exceptionally important as opposed to ease of access. Not to mention it's something that really drives the whole entire economy. Now, I'm not necessarily stating that you're going to get any, or you're going to give any more or any less to an artist directly through using the iTunes protocol. I'm also not necessarily saying that you're going to do that whenever you purchase a physical record either. This is something where if you really want to support an artist, the best way to really do it is to go onto their website and order a t-shirt, or go to a show, attend something like that. That's where a lot of their revenues are being drawn from. But to have the music is definitely something that you want as well, because even though you might only be giving them, a fraction of $2, that's still something better than nothing, and it still shows your support. How can you really say that you're the #1 fan of an artist whenever you downloaded all of their music, whenever you got the t-shirt for $7 secondhand from somebody, and whenever the option came up to go to the show, you looked at your bank account and thought, well, $15, that's way too much. I would only see this artist if it were free. You're not the #1 fan, you're the #1 chump. You really suck ass. So, whenever we look at this, the physical media is something that really needs to be driven, and because of the online medium, especially through iTunes, the numbers have definitely become exceptionally skewed. We're now talking about some of the artists of today easily crawling into the pantheon of some of the greatest artists of all time sales-wise because of sales on iTunes or on applications where you can get ringtones and things like that. So these are singles that are quickly going up the charts, even though it's not necessarily being purchased just for listening, but rather just so they can have it on their phone, so whenever somebody calls, they get to hear that new Rihanna song that they like for 5 seconds. It's kind of an annoying idea whenever you think about it. Whenever you looked at the list from 10 or 15 years ago of some of the greatest artists of all time, you saw truly a pantheon of greats, people who were really able to resonate with a lot of individuals and weren't necessarily or were selling well just because it was easy to gain access to on a peripheral device. This was something that instead was really a true benchmark of great musicianship and them just being fantastic artists. Instead, what we have today is a real skewing of the numbers based around the number of people who are just basically downloading it based around who the artist is. For example, there's a statistic that is, well, pretty terrible, at least in my opinion, and that's the fact that the cast of Glee has actually had more charting singles than the Beatles. Now, it doesn't matter whether or not you like the Beatles or not. That really isn't the point. And it's not necessarily stating that this is some terrible travesty because they have more than the Beatles. Of course, Beatles fans will argue otherwise. However, the Beatles were classically seen as one of the first and initial great, cult icons, huge icons where Beatlemania swept the world, much, to the same tune that Elvis Presley ruled the airwaves from the 50s to the 1970s, the Beatles really dominated the 1960s. So this is an idea where the cast of Glee, who essentially got most of these numbers based around versions that were heard on the television show, which, by the way, was a hit drama / comedy / musical show, moved onto either iTunes or onto peripheral devices such as phones and things like that, and downloads, really overshadowed the fact that if you went into a store, you would not see very many people purchasing Glee records. That's right, these are songs that are getting on these lists individually based around the number of downloads that have happened after the download has become available. And that's what it has now become. This is something that has skewed the top charts. This is something that makes it impossible for new artists to really make it into that pantheon unless they have a breakout hit or that one-hit wonder song that just kind of infects the nation for a while and doesn't let up. This makes the whole idea a lot harder to kind of conjure. It makes the whole idea a little bit more difficult, and it really restricts artists a good bit because it seems as though no matter what they do, they're kind of held back. Now you can always have that breakout. You can always have that breakout like Psy with Gangnam Style or, Elvis with the Fox. You can always have those breakouts with, Party Rock Anthem or whatever it may be, the thing that's trending on iTunes at the time. But overall, this is something that can become very damaging. And also, these artists are going to certainly get an extra boost by the fact that these are going to be ones that are promoted the heaviest. Considering these are the ones that have proven to sell in the past, they're going to get a lot of help whenever it comes to promotion. And this is something where having a major deal, once again, just like before, where having a major deal meant you got more CDs in more stores in more locations, you're going to get more hype on iTunes. So overall, what really do we have to say about this? What is the final conclusion that can be drawn from all of this? Is iTunes something that we really want to be a part of as audiophiles? Is it something that really is a huge part of our lives? Is it something that should really define our generation? Or is it something where iTunes kind of had its relevance in the past 10 years, but now it's time for a new revolution? It's time for us to go back to the old style and kind of leave the whole digital music idea behind. I think that with the digital sales kind of going down, it sort of has given us enough of a push in the right direction where a lot of people do want to go back to physical mediums, at least in some regard. Now, many people have claimed that they're kind of bulky, they take up a lot of space, and they have this and that to say about that, but as a true audiophile, as a true individual who, truly worships music, who truly finds music to be just the greatest power in the universe, I still have to say that the physical medium is the best way to go. However, I will also state, and play devil's advocate of myself, and claim that my audacity toward iTunes was probably a little bit misappropriated. I wasn't so much saying that people who used iTunes and bought music on iTunes were, terrible individuals and were single-handedly destroying the music business. Because let's face it, all shapes and sizes go on iTunes and buy all different styles of music, no matter what it may be. Just as many people, well, okay, maybe not just as many, but there are going to be fans that are going to go on there and buy rap and pop, and there's also going to be individuals that are going to buy heavy metal and jazz and blues and different things like that. It's not as though this is something that's only being, generated and directed toward one style of music, whereas everybody else has kind of been left behind. This is instead something that's been tailor-made by a person's preference, rather than tailor-made by what's being pushed on you. So, really, I don't think that the people that use iTunes are bad individuals. I don't necessarily think it makes them bad music fans either. I guess I just feel, and perhaps this is an elitist attitude, that they're missing out on one of the most important facets of being a true audiophile. They're missing out on one of the true aspects of being a true music nerd, somebody who really feels that music is the diction process of their life. The only thing that really is able to put words to situations where words that come to their mind don't necessarily really size up. So, in short, I would never use iTunes, but you might. And if you do, that's cool. But if you really want to take your obsession with music one step further, if you really want to take your love of music one step further, physical media is the way to go, and vinyl's making a comeback. I think it's time for you to maybe hang up your iTunes account and retire your iPod and get yourself a turntable and some wax. That's just my opinion, though. What's yours?